George and Gertrude for letting us use their lovely home.
Here, 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 here.
Now, George asked me to kind of do this gig a while back. It's very scary. Let me tell you, there are two places where people who are speaking cannot be heard. One of them is in the middle of a hurricane, and we all know what that's like. And the other is at any gathering of Democrats. I mean, you don't even need a quorum before you have a rush of language that fills the room. And we come together because we have been neglected way too long. We're doing all right kind of in the White House, but the rest of the world seems to be organized against us. And I think it is very important that Texans learn to use the word pride in connection with liberal.
Here, here.
Right.
I've got friends who just can't quite articulate that. But it's never been difficulty because I've always been afraid that Frankie Taylor Hill, my mother, will come out that grave and do something nasty to me if I ever forget that my roots are in Texas populist liberals. Her father, Dr. William Marion Franklin Taylor, was a Marxist and an atheist in Leon County, Texas. At the turn of the 20th century. He was able to get away with that because he was the physician. And when you're the physician, they tried to kick him out of the Masons 3 times for being an atheist, but he beat him on procedure every time. He would have made a great lawyer, but he had to cure too many people of their ills and ills. And he really didn't charge much for the practice of medicine. Oh, if you had a lot of money, you could pay him. But everybody else he bartered with. So for him, an egalitarian system works very well. He died a very landed gentleman. And thankfully, he picked some land with oil royalty, which helped me out in a pinch. Those of you who follow the news, and I've never known anyone to come to these events that didn't follow the news, are aware that I just went to and got out of jail. That's not an unusual thing. The last time I went to jail was in 2005. People say, well, I thought you went all the time. But I'm subject to. Richard and I were having lunch today at the Spaghetti Warehouse, good pasta cheap. And so there was an officer came sashaying in with her jacket off and her handcuffs hanging on her back belt and her Glock on her hip. And she saw the table and she went immediately over to the stairs and she sat down and she called. Well, I knew what she was doing. My primary opponent and the police department are trying to find something that they can arrest me for. So do not be surprised when that happens. And if I can prove that that is bullshit, my rate for going to jail is $50 a minute, so don't bail me out. I know very well what I am doing. And the recent arrest, which will be a continuing news for the rest of the year, the officers that arrested me got back to the station. Their superior said, fill out an offense report now. So they sat down like little beavers and they filled down, they filled down, they filled down, they filled down. And they did not know the whole thing was videotaped from start to finish. So the offense report includes a great deal of activity that does not appear on the videotape. They sent 2 officers to interview me, and I walked out in the hall and I said, are you out of your mind? You got it? Thank you, Connie. Connie Goldman. Are you out of your mind? Do you know who the hell you're talking to? I wouldn't have a conversation with you suckers. I used a stronger word than that, actually. If I had Paul Nugent on one leg and Stan Snyder on the other in my lap. I mean, I know not to talk to police officers when you're in custody. They only remember what they want to remember and all of that. And they said, well, Mr. Hill, we thought you wanted to just tell us what happened. I said, you will see it on the videotape. Wow, the faces hit the floor. because they hadn't thought about that possibility. Put this in the margins and tell every police officer you know, Ray Hill will not get arrested without videotape, ever. Ever. And I know where the camera is, and I control the film.
Oh, sorry,
I
George.
thought that for a story tonight, and that was just a warm-up. I am very fond of our sheriff in Harris County. And I know it's difficult for somebody in my position to be fond of sheriffs. I've known them all. I knew Jack Hurd very well, and he got so full of himself that I said, let's replace him with Johnny Clevenhagen, who proved to be even worse, and all of that. But Adrian Garcia went to work for the police department, and as soon as he got out of the academy, they looked at him and said, he's bright, he's Hispanic, we're going to put him in the gang task force. And he went to that assignment, and he took it conscientiously, and he was trying to address the problems of gangs with at-risk youth in the city and county, and that is, if anything, the Lord's work. But he called me one afternoon and said, Mr. Hill, you don't know me, but I'm a police officer assigned to the gang task force. You know anything about gangs? I said, I know a great deal about gangs, and about prison gangs and street gangs, and the dynamic doesn't change much. He said, can I talk to you? We got together, and he said, I don't think we're doing this right. And I said, well, what are you doing? He said, well, we're shining up our guns and showing our handcuffs and shining our badges, and we're going out and telling these kids that we're a gang too, but only we have got the power to arrest you and put your ass in jail, so we're a tougher gang than you are, and we're going to be keeping an eye on you. And I said, no, you're doing everything. That is all wrong. Gangs are not about tough guys hanging together. Gangs are about cowards manipulating weak people. So instead of saying we're a gang and we're tougher and we're tough guys hanging together and you're tough guys hanging together and we're tougher than you are tough, is not the way to do this, Gertrude. Because they do not understand adolescent male identity. It reinforces everything, nor does anybody for that matter. So I hang out in confidence clubs. I know more about it than you do. And those guys never grow up. But at any rate, the whole idea, I wasn't there for the women, I was there for the cops. But the whole idea is you reinforce their mythology, you're not doing anything about the problem. So he went back and he tried that. It lasted about 2 weeks. And then he called me and said, well, I got kicked out of the gang task force. Well, about that time, Houston Police Chief Lee P. Brown needed somebody in the PR department that was articulate, smart, and bilingual. And so I went to Lee P. and said, I know this guy that is basically unassigned. And Lee P. said, all right. He took my advice frequently. And so he went and interviewed him and said, you're right, it's a great guy, and he went to the PR department. And we would see Adrian on the television at various scenes. I loved him there because when he had to lie as part of his job description, you could see it in his face. You know? So I knew when he was lying, even if he didn't know he was telling me he was lying. But if you're the flack for the police department, you spend a lot of time lying. I mean, that's just part of the job description. And he did that for a while, and then my friend, Felix Braga, who's a wonderful guy, was term limiting out. And I happened to know that Adrian lived in that district. So a small group of us got together and went to Adrian and said, have you thought about running for city? Oh, I'm not a politician. I said, well, you've been in the media, you've got some exposure. And he said, oh, there'll be 1,000 people. And I said, that's good. Donnybrook is a good thing, isn't it, Gertrude? And especially if you've got a face that's been in the media, Donnybrook's great. Give me 10 opponents, it's better than 1. And so he bid. We breezed through that election as if we'd all been given a very good laxative. It just whoosh, over with. It was over with. And then he ran for a second term and got only marginal crazy opposition, but all us politicians pray for that. And then he didn't even have any opposition his third term. I called him and I said, you ever thought about running for sheriff? He said, no. He said, I owe it to my voters that I do fulfill this session of city council. I said, no, your voter, you fell into that crowd. You didn't get elected there. You didn't owe anybody anything. And they knew you were a cop when you run. And so we took the Democratic primary by storm. We got just the crazies as usual. And then I kid you not, every morning, early every morning, Tommy Thomas would get up and do something to help our campaign. I felt guilty that we didn't have him on the payroll. I thought about sneaking some money to him because every morning he would get up and do something so incredibly, do you remember that? He would do something so incredibly stupid, and Wayne Dolcevino or whoever from whatever would be on his ass in a minute. Everything written about the Houston Press was enough to cause me to commit suicide. If they wrote about me like that, I would just curl up and die somewhere, as indeed he politically did. And then Adrian became the high sheriff of Harris County. I want you to think just a minute about how many hurdles an Hispanic young man like Adrian Garcia being the high sheriff of Harris County. He doesn't do everything I like to do. I'm up there pissing on Bernstein's leg all the time. If you don't know that, if you need to talk to Sheriff, forget it. Just call Alan Bernstein. He used to be at the Chronicle. We all know him. He's covered our beat for years. And he is the guy that whispers into the ear. So if things don't go right, I call him. And he inherited an enormous mess. There is an issue coming up, and I will end this story with this issue. And the reason I told this issue is we got the right man for the right job in Adrian Garcia. There's no question in my mind that we don't have the right man for the right job. Commissioner Radack went to New Orleans to a meeting of ALEC. You know what that is? Anybody not know what ALEC is? ALEC is where the corporations get together and tell the politicians what they want them to do for them. Some of our friends were over there with big shopping bags full of money to bring out, and a lot of Republicans were over there. Radack has already been paid to privatize Harris County Jail and turn it over to a private corporation so it can be run as a profit motive operation. Let me tell you something. If there are ideas that are worse than others, and I truly believe that there are, locking people up for a profit motive is one of those ideas.
It's called slavery. We did it. It's not new.
I know, it's all in the media now, but it wasn't when we started. And it's just a proposal at this point. The county judge has not put it on the docket. And so I need everybody's help. I need your attention to that issue. I need you to speak out that issue. I need you to tell your friends and your neighbors that turning that over, if you want to see what that's like, you want to get a picture of that, just go over to Liberty County. Their county jail is already privately operated. Just go over there and see the quality of health care. Go over there and see how women are treated in that institution. Go over there and see what they are fed in that institution. And you will be absolutely convinced that as important an institution it is for taxpayers to put the bill on. Harris County Jail cannot fall into that trap. Thank you very much for listening. Jan, are you around here somewhere?